Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, our nightly look back at a specific day in history, where we take a look back at the events of a day, the historic context in which they took place, and the historic ramifications of those events. If you have not yet, please hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content, and tell a friend. And without any further ado, This Day in History, April the 9th. And on this day, in 1965, the first indoor baseball game in history is played in the Astrodome in Houston, Texas. The stadium originally had natural grass, although this would soon become a problem as the Astros would discover that grass could not grow and survive in the dome stadium. This would lead to the invention of AstroTurf. Called the eighth wonder of the world at its open, the dome would revolutionize sports and pop culture. The dome also would lead to the Houston professional baseball team changing their names. Originally, they were called the Colt 45s. They would rename the Astros in honor of Houston's connection to the NASA space program at the time. The first game was an exhibition game against the New York Yankees. The game was attended by President Johnson and the governor of Texas. Mickey Mantle of the New York Yankees would record the first hit in the stadium, a single, and home run. The Astros would win 2-1. The dome was home until 1988 of a 4-story scoreboard that would feature an animation after Houston Astros home runs. The dome, since the Astros have left at the end of the 1999 season for Enron Field, now Minute Maid Park, has become a subject of much debate in Houston. There's always plans to do something with the dome, and they fall through. It has become sort of an abandoned tourist hotspot. Often, every couple of years, you'll see video of people that have snuck inside the Astrodome and just taking a picture of its disrepair and current state, and it is absolutely shocking. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic. It is not as bad as the Pontiac Silverdome was in Pontiac, Michigan. Mostly because it is next door to an active NFL stadium. But it is very bad on the inside of the Astrodome. Some of the uses after the stadium was no longer an active MLB or NFL stadium was that for a short time it continued to host the Houston Livestock Show. It would hold a bowl game up until the mid-2000s. And in 2005, it was used to house evacuees from New Orleans after the Superdome became uninhabitable after that disaster that befell the Superdome occurred. Some births that occurred on this day. Hugh Hefner was born in 1926 in Chicago. Of course, Hefner is the legendary founder of Playboy magazine. He was also a passionate animal rights activist and led the restoration of the Hollywood sign in the 1980s. In 1952, he left his job at Esquire after being denied a $5 raise. He would take $600 to mortgage against his house and $8,000 from investors and use it to fund an upstart magazine called Playboy. In 1953, the first issue that December would feature topless photos of Marilyn Monroe that were taken in 1949. Hefner never met Monroe. The issue sold 50,000 copies. Hefner, in the early 90s, would buy the crypt next to Monroe at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Los Angeles, and upon his death in 2017 at the age of 91, he would be buried next to Monroe. And there was some articles about this at the time, kind of talking about the creepiness of it, because Hefner died around the time of that the Me Too movement was really taking off, and there was a lot of people that pointed out that Hefner never met Monroe, that he never asked her permission to publish the photos, and that he never met her and intentionally bought a burial spot next to her. And those are all valid points, but Hugh Hefner definitely had an impact on American culture for good or bad. And really was one of the driving forces in preserving, as I said, the Hollywood sign. By the time of the 80s, it had fallen into terrible disrepair, and Hefner really led the funding to restore it. He was a fan of classic Hollywood, and often once a week would host movie night at the mansion, and he would show a film of old Hollywood, and really that was something he put a lot of emphasis on. Hefner, of course, would marry multiple times and would actually have sons in the 1980s and 1990s. And they continue the legacy today at Playboy. And his daughter from his first marriage was the longtime chairman of the magazine and company, taking over for her father. He became more the figurehead of the magazine. And one thing you also can point to about Hefner is Hefner never really was into the graphic, hardcore pornography that came to define the genre later. Hefner always saw it more as an artistic form, and would always pitch it that way to people being photographed in Playboy, especially celebrities of a higher caliber, and that's how he was able to get so many famous celebrities to pose for Playboy. Deaths that occurred. Frank Lloyd Wright in 1959 at the age of 91 in Phoenix. He's a famous American architect. There are multiple homes across the nation and world that bear his architecture or design. Of course, the most famous of these is Falling Water, which has been called the best example of American architecture ever. He used a style of architecture called organic architecture. And if you've ever had the chance to see a Frank Lloyd Wright home, your breath is taken away, and it's quite a experience. Last summer I was in Springfield, Illinois. And although I did not get to visit the home during my visit, there is a Frank Lloyd Wright home in downtown Springfield, and it is quite beautiful and a sight to behold. So that's all I have for today. I hope you all have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.